Hello, and welcome back to Bedtime Stories with Vice Vice Baby, where we will continue the Sandman's Hour story. The Mirror's Dream. The very idea of putting me in the attic, said the little old-fashioned table, as it spread out both leaves in a gesture of despair. I have stood on the parlor downstairs for 50 years, and now I am consigned to the rubbish room. And it dropped its leaf at its side with a sigh. I was there longer than that, said the sofa. Many a courtship I have helped along. What do you think of me? Asked an old mirror that stood on the floor, leaning against the wall. To be brought to the attic after reflecting generation after generation. All the famous beauties have looked into my face. It is a degradation from which I can never recover. This young mistress who had come here to live does not seem to understand the dignity of our position. Why, I was in the family when her husband's grandmother was a girl, and she has doomed me to a dusty attic to dream out the rest of my days. The shadows deepened in the room, and gradually the discarded mirror ceased to complain. It had fallen asleep, but later the moonlight streamed in through the window and showed that its dreams were pleasant ones, for it dreamed of the old and happy days. The door opened softly and a young girl entered. Her hair was dark and hung in curls over her wide shoulders. Her dark eyes wandered over the room until she saw the old mirror. She ran across the room and stood in front of it. She wore a hoop skirt over which hung her dress of pale gray, with tiny pink ruffles that began at her slender waist and ended at the bottom of her wide skirt. Tiny pink rosebuds were dotted over the waist and skirt, and she also wore them in her dark curls, where one stray blossom bolder than the others rested against her soft cheek. She stood before the mirror and gazed at her reflection a minute. Then she curtsied and said with a laugh, "I think you will do. He must speak tonight." She seemed to fade away in the moonlight, and the door opened again, and a lady entered, and with her came 5 handsome children. They went to the mirror, and one little girl with dark curls and pink cheeks went close and touched it with her finger. "Look," she said to the others, "I look just like the picture of Mother when she was a girl." And as they stood there, a gentleman appeared beside them and put his arm around the lady, and the children gathered around them. They seemed to walk along the moonlight path and disappear through the window. Softly, the door opened again, and an old lady entered, leaning on one arm of an old gentleman. They walked to the mirror, and he put his arms around her and kissed her withered cheek. "You are always young and fair to me," he said, and her face smiled into the depths of the old mirror. The moonlight made a halo around their heads as they faded away. The morning light streamed in through the window, and the mirror's dream was ended. By and by, the door opened, and a young girl came in the room. Her dark hair was piled high on her head, and her dark eyes looked over the room until they fell upon a chest in the corner. She went to it and opened it and took out a pale gray dress with pink ruffles. She put it on, then she let down her hair, which fell in curls over her shoulders. She ran to the old mirror and looked at herself. "I do look like grandmother," she said. "I will wear this to the old folks' party tonight. Grandfather proposed to grandmother the night she wore this dress." Her cheeks turned very pink as she said this, and ran out of the room. Then, one day, the door opened again and a bride entered, leaning on one arm of her young husband. There were tears in her eyes, although she was smiling. She led him in front of the old mirror. "This old mirror," she said, "has seen all the brides in our family for generations, and I am going far away and may never look into it again. My brother's wife does not want it downstairs, and I may be the last bride it will ever see." And she passed her hand over its frame caressingly. And then, when she went away, and the old mirror was left to its dream for many years. Then one day, the door opened again, and a lady entered. With her was a young girl. The lady looked around the attic room until she saw the mirror. "There it is," she said. "Come and look in it, dear." The young girl followed her. "The last time I looked into this dear old mirror," the lady said, "was the day your father and I were married. I never expected to have it for my own then, but your uncle's wife wants to remodel the house, and these things are in the way. She does not want old-fashioned things, and they are willing I should have them." "Oh, mother, they are beautiful," said the girl, looking around the room. "We will never part with them. We will take them to our home and make them forget they were ever discarded." And so the mirror and the sofa and the table and many other pieces of bygone days went to live where they were loved. And the old mirror still reflects dark-haired girls and ladies who smile into its depths and see its beauty as well as their own. The contest. The old white rooster was dead. The hens stood in groups of 3s and 4s all around the yard. The turkeys were gathered around the big gobbler and seemed to be talking very earnestly. The duck stood around the old drake, who was shaking his head empathetically as he talked. The geese were listening very attentively to the gander, and he was stretching his neck and seemed to be trying to impress them with its length. "I see no reason now why I should not be king of the yard," he was saying. "White Rooster is dead, and there is no other rooster to take his place. I am going to see the hens and ask them what they think." "White Rooster is dead," he said to them, "and I think I should be king of the yard. My neck is very long, and I can see over the heads of the fowls. And I see no reason why I should not take the place of White Rooster." The turkeys and the geese, seeing the gander approach the hens, ran as fast as they could to hear what he was saying. The turkey gobbler, hearing the last part of the gander's remark, said, "How can you say that you can see over all heads? Have you forgotten me and my height? And as for being king," he said, "the rooster never should have been cock of the walk. I am a much more majestic looking bird than any rooster. No, indeed, you should never think of ruling, Sir Gander. I should be king of the yard." The gobbler walked away, spreading out his wings and letting them drag on the ground, and gobbling very loudly. The ducks and the drake stood listening to all this talk, and as the gobbler walked away, the drake said, "I cannot understand why anyone should think of being king when I know so much of the world. I am the one to rule, for I have been all around the pond, and it is very large. Because of my knowledge, I think I should be king." "He must not be king," whispered one old hen to the other. "He would make us go in the water, and we will all be drowned." They had talked a long time without reaching any decision when the dog happened along. "What is the matter?" he asked. "The old white rooster is dead," said the gobbler, who had returned with his family to hear the discussion. "And I think I should be king, and the drake and the gander think they should. But of course, you can see that I am best suited to rule a yard." "You can settle that very easily," said the dog. "You can all take turn at being king, and in that way you will know who is best suited to rule." And so it was decided, and the gobbler was the first one to go on the trial. The poor hens tagged along after the turkeys, for the gobbler insisted upon parading all around the yard. The gander and the drake would not follow behind, so the gander and his family walked on one side of the gobbler, and the drake and his family on the other. The poor hens wept as they followed behind. "I never was so humiliated in my life," said one old hen, "and it is not right." The next day, there was so much dissatisfaction because of the gobbler's overbearing way that the dog decided that the drake must take his turn. "Everybody must learn to swim," said the drake as soon as he was appointed ruler. "Come down to the pond." And off he started. His family waddled after him. "What did I tell you?" said the old hen. "This will be the end of us." The geese did not mind being in the water part of the time, but the turkeys set up such a gobble and the hens cackled so loudly that the dog had to decide right there that the drake was not a suitable king. The gander, knowing that his time had come, stretched over his neck and looked very important. "You need not go near the pond," he said to the hens, "but you must learn to fly." And he spread out his wings as he spoke and flew over the fence. The geese followed him. The turkeys flew to the top of the fence and roosted there, but the hens and ducks stood on the ground, looking up at them in the most discouraged way, and at the gobbler, who gobbled at them, saying, "You are to be pitied, for you do not see all the sights we do, and you never can fly to the top of this fence." "There is the master," he said. "He's coming down the road, and he has something under his arm. I'll tell you what it is when he gets near." The hens were trying to look under the fence and through the holes. The gobbler looked for a minute, and then he said, "I do believe—" Then he stopped. "Yes, it is," he continued, looking again. "It's a rooster." The gobbler flew down, and the turkeys followed, and the master drove the gander and his family back to the yard. "You will get your wings clipped tomorrow," he said, and then from under his arm he released a big yellow and black rooster, which flew to the ground, looked about, spread his wings, and crowed in a way that plainly said, "I am cock of this walk and king of this yard. Let none dispute my rights." The drake collected his family and started for the pond, and the gander and geese followed along behind. The turkey spread his wings and held his head high as he strutted away with his family, but he did not impress the new rooster. He was ruler, and he knew it. "Now, the sun will know when to rise," said one hen, "and we shall know when to awake." "Yes," said another, "and we have had a narrow escape. It looked for a while as if our family were to lose its social standing. But now that we have a new king, we can hold up our heads again and look down on the others, if we have to go to the top of the wood pile to do it." The dog laughed to himself, and he walked away. "I knew all the time," he said, that the new rooster was coming, but I thought it would do them good to know they were only fitted to care for their own flock. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Bedtime Stories with Vice Vice Baby. I hope you all have a good night and sweet dreams.